Alright, so let's talk about collections in Laravel. Let's talk about collections in Laravel. Why do we need collections, and the most important thing, what are collections? So collections are basically a very powerful tool of a Laravel that is used to manipulate with the data around with arrays or the data that is returning from the database. And there is lot of built-in functions provided by the collections, and we will try to cover all these functions one by one. So let's get started with the collections. The first important thing is how we can declare or define a collection. So in order to define a collection, what we need to do is basically, as I mentioned, that the collections work on arrays or the data that is being returned to us by the database. So that could be an object or collections as well. So if I now try to create a variable of collection, and then let's define an array of 1 up to 10 characters, integer values. Now, I have defined the integer array of up to 10 values. In order to convert this into a collection, I need to wrap this around a variable a function which is called collect. Now, this will convert the array into collection. And now if I dump and die this collection variable, you will notice that in the browser, if I reload, I see the collection object here. So this is basically now a collection object which contains an items of array. So with this means like we now have converted the collections, we now have converted our array into collections. Now let's see what we can do on collections. The first important thing is like we can get all values from collections. So what this will return? This will return us the items of array. Here you can see which we have defined initially. This has returned those items from the array. Now, what else we can do? So there is a long list of functions provided by the Laravel. So let's talk about all of those one by one. So this was the first method. Now let's talk about the second method. Now let's say if I want to sum all these values. So what can I do? I can chain a method of sum. So now if I reload, I get the 55 value. And there is also another method. If I want to fetch the average of all the collections, I can use the AVG method. So this will return me 5.5. And let's say I have an array which is basically unsorted. For an instance, let me just make it unsort array. So as you can see like that, I have converted this array into an unsorted one. Now if I want to sort the array, what can I do? I can basically simply chain a method of called sort. Now if I reload the page, you can see all the items are sorted. So 7, 10, 20, 30, 61, 88. So these are sorted from ascending to descending. Now what if I want to sort my arrays descendingly? I can use sort descending method. Now if I reload the page, I should get the values higher the first and then from higher to the lower one. Now there is another very important function which is called which works on array of strings. For let's say for example, I define an array which contains names. Just say for example, my name is Walid, and then I declare two more names, James, John, and David. So we now have 4 names in a collection. Now let's say what I want is basically I want to convert all these variables into uppercase. So all I want is basically to convert all the names of a collection into uppercase. What can I do is basically I can chain a method of called map. So this will be this accepts a callback function. And inside the callback function, because this will run a for each loop behind the scenes, obviously not a for each loop, but this will map on every item. So let's say we have name here in this scenario. The item is considered to be name here, and we can also get the key as well. If we want to define anything, certain operations based on key, we can also get the keys here. But we have collections and map. All I want is basically to return me a string which contains uppercase of all my names. Now if I dump and die the collection by using the all method, because at the end we need to use the all method in order to get the values from the collection. Now if I reload the page, I see I do not see my names returned as uppercase. The problem is that because when we apply this map method, this actually does not change our original collection. So now if I reload the page, I still see those names appear here. So this does not actually change the original collection. All I need to do is basically I can either store this in a variable of collection, or I can chain the method directly on the collection by itself. So by doing so, if I now reload the page, I now get all the variables in the uppercase. Now let's say for an instance I have a name which is basically a null here. So there is no actually name here. So now if I reload, this will show me an empty string, which I really don't want. What can I do is basically I can also chain a method of reject as well. So now this reject will also accept a callback function which contains the name here, and then this should return if empty name. Alright, so if the name is empty, this should return the name, and the name will automatically be rejected by this function. Now if I reload, now you can see that name is gone from here. Now the next example is, let's say I have this collection again back into my project. So I have this collection and this contains a very long values. So now what can I do? The first thing I will do is basically I will sort this one ascendingly. Now what I want is basically, let's assume like this is a very large array of data, and I want to run a for each loop on each array, and I want to perform certain operations on that, maybe within the database, or maybe I want to run a for each loop on some Excel file and stuff like that. And what I want is basically I want to convert this array into smaller arrays so that this doesn't take up a lot of memory of my browser and my machine, and it doesn't actually throw me an error. So all I can do is basically I can convert this array into chunks, and by the chunks I can also define like how many chunks do I need. So let's say for an instance I convert this collection into chunks. Now I need to give the size of the chunk. So let's say I want to convert each array, the collection array, into 2 items of each array. So this will basically convert this into the chunks. Now if I dump and die the collection here and I use all, so now in the browser I see I have now 4 arrays, because we have up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. So we have 10 and we have 5 different arrays created, because I gave the size of 2 to each. Now if I give the size of 5, now there are 2 arrays. Now an array containing 2 more arrays. So now if I open that, this contains 5 items of the starting, and then this contains 5 items from the ending. So this is a very important feature of using, for instance, let's say you are trying to include or import a very large SQL file or very large Excel file, or if you want to display or let's assume like you have 3 different columns on your web page, a column 1, column 2 and column 3, and you want to show up to 5 values on each column. So that for each loop will work in very perfect way, and then you can declare your number of columns, and then you can also define the values inside the column. So let me show you a very quick example, because right now we do not have any columns here. So I will just try to play with the natural for each loop. So all I want to do is basically run a for each loop on collection all. So for each collection all as $collect, or maybe let's say an item. Now because we have chunks here, so this is divided into chunks, so this item will contain further more items. So I will say for each item as let's say child for an instance, and I want to echo out every child value. So if I echo out $child and then I use the BR tag here as well. Now if I reload the page, you see I have 7, 10, 20, all are displayed as a single values. Now in order to bifurcate those, I can create, let's say, a new variable here or a new separator, which will basically separate my values. So I can put it down at the on the inner for each loop. So now if I reload, now you see we have two arrays. This means like we have two divs surrounded by each div. So now you can also define a number of, let's say for example, if I define, let's say 3 here, so this will give us a 4. So 3, 3, 3 and last one. So in this section, in this case, we will have 4 different divs on our web page. Alright, so we have talked enough for now. That's about it, and I will see you in the upcoming videos.